we are going to get started. Thanks for being here. This is the Vital Voices of English Language Learners and Neurodivergent Students, how simple inclusive practices foster student success and community enrichment. If you are interested in all the sources we are citing today, we have a QR code on the bottom here. We also have a short URL. Feel free to bring those up. We will also be posting them at the end, and we're going to get started. So this is Jocelyn.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Jocelyn Castillo here. I am the information literacy librarian here at John Jay Library. So this project and this presentation, it's something that some of the information I'll be sharing is something that I worked on as a course project for one of the courses I was taking for the grad program I'm in now. And it is going to focus, some areas will focus on English language learners, as we know, and I identify as an English language learner. I will sort of change and use English language learners as well as English learners in this presentation, but I am referring to those that are acquiring English as an additional language. And of course, this was something that Ingrid and I discussed. This presentation is something that helps us continue finding new ways for librarians to engage with students and also share with faculty some things that I have learned through from my readings that can also help you in your classrooms when it comes to teaching students in the class environment.
I'm Ingrid. I am the Reference and Digital Initiatives Librarian, and I have both a personal and professional relationship with neurodivergence. I am a former pre-K through 12 school library director, and I found it unacceptable that bright and capable children often struggled in the classroom and were labeled as difficult or lazy simply because they couldn't conform to traditional classroom norms. And after conducting careful research and spending hours observing, I largely moved away from the conventional classroom setting. I adopted a flexible and responsive teaching approach, and I discovered that simple, actionable adjustments led to significant improvements in student engagement and just my enjoyment of being a teacher as well. Additionally, I am a later in life diagnosed neurodivergent person, which gives me firsthand insight into the lack of support for neurodivergent adults, like the neurodivergent adults that are some of our students.
All right, so this is pretty much an overview of what we hope to accomplish today in this presentation. So we are going to discuss some obstacles that certain students face, specifically English learners and neurodivergent students. And we may not cover all, of course, but we are going to touch on some things that are pertinent to them. We are also going to, from our own research and personal experience, we are going to discuss some inclusive practices to support learning in a classroom for these students. And we will also ask you to share maybe some of your approaches a little later during the presentation. We're going to open that up. So maybe you can just share with us as well what you have done. And in addition to that, we are going to highlight standard approaches in library, especially here, that we do have some services that are standard, but we do have a little twist to them. So just to kind of give you some the unconventional spin that we do have in the services that we do already offer here in the library. Okay, so here, let's see. So do you want to start this off? Yeah.
Research surrounding EL and ND students, English learner and ND students, is often problematized, and such individuals are often presented as puzzles in need of a solution. However, these community members offer unique perspectives and vital contributions to campus culture and the academic dialogue. When ND individuals are well supported by their communities, they are often skilled problem solvers, creative out-of-the-box thinkers, extremely detail-oriented, and have excellent pattern recognition skills. And while hyperfixations are not always pleasant experiences for autistic people and ADHDers, ND people often find intellectual fulfillment in fully exploring topics that are personally meaningful.
Great. So here what we do see also are, I'm highlighting, or we're highlighting here, John Jay's demographic student body. So as you can see here, you can see the numbers there. I mean, I would like to point out also that 1/3 were born in another country and raised in New York City. So here, of course, and I also know that many of our students here at John Jay are from New York City public school systems, right? So in the New York Public City school system, there are K through 12 linguistic support programs that students do come across or they have access to. But according to, and what I want to say, I'm sorry, and it sounded a little confusing there, but let's just focus on, yeah, just the linguistic support program, I'm sorry. But according to our students and key demographics, close to half of the students that are here at John Jay speak a language other than English at home. So just highlighting that also sort of does not necessarily identify what percentage of students are learning English as an additional language or even as a second language, but they are part of our community here at John Jay.
Despite the necessity of these voices, ELs and NDs may excel or struggle in manners that seem atypical, especially when they're measured against neurotypical students and or native English speakers. In short, different students learn differently. We support and invest in these students by offering various pathways to success.
Okay, so here, so what do we mean, of course, by English learners, right? So of course, what we are referring to are students that are acquiring English as an additional language. So they are learning it as an additional language. It can be a second language, it can be a third language, etc. They are also considered international students, fall under the category of English learners. They, however, international students do learn reading and writing system in their native language. They're also generation 1.5 immigrant students. So what do we mean by that? It's a category that includes students that immigrated to the US when they were young. So they have gone through the K through 12 system here, depending on what grade, depending on when they came to the US. Also includes students that were born in the US to parents that are immigrants. So their first language is not English. And it also includes students that are raised in homes and in a community environment where English is not the primary language. So those are generation 1.5 immigrants. And then in addition to that, it's also newly arrived immigrants that are learning English now in addition to the language that they have back home. It also means that English learners can't be linguistically and culturally diverse, which I have said just previously. It could be English can be their second language or third language, or sometimes even their fourth language. So they speak several languages as well, and also identify with various cultures. So some of the challenges that English learners may face in higher education, as I had mentioned earlier when I got a little confused there, in K through 12, they have gone through linguistic support, which is really something that is available to many students, regardless of what level or what that really looks like in K through 12. However, when they transition into higher education, things are a little bit different. So for example, one of the things that they do, some challenges they may have is participating in the classroom. So this can be unfortunately interpreted or misinterpreted by the instructor as not being interested in the material, maybe not being lazy in a sense. So there's like this kind of umbrella that they fall under sometimes. So due to limited participation, which can again be just misinterpreted. Also, they may avoid communication or interaction with the faculty member because they may feel not comfortable in wording or formulating the question that they want to share or concern with the faculty member. So it's not just that they don't want to reach out to the instructor, but maybe just not knowing exactly how to word things. Also, as I mentioned earlier, in K through 12, they do have specific linguistic support, but in higher education, that responsibility shifts and falls on the student themselves. So they may not seek out or access academic or language support programs in the schools. And again, this is not every student, this is just some students. So that's something to sort of keep in mind as well. And Also, very important is the academic vocabulary. So even though they are English proficient, so meaning they can have a conversation, they can socialize in English, they may not realize that there's some English skills that are needed at the college level, especially when it comes to coursework. So that can also be something that is a challenge for them in higher education.
So what does it mean to be neurodivergent? This is a complicated definition. My favorite one is in Neuroqueer Heresies by Nick Walker, where they define neurodivergent as having a mind that functions in ways which diverge significantly from the dominant societal standards of normal. Walker goes on to remind us that the word normal isn't terribly thoughtful or precise. Neurodivergent is divergence not from some objective state of normality, but rather from whatever constructed image and performance of normality the prevailing culture currently seeks to impose. Neurodivergence can include autism, ADHD, synesthesia, dyslexia, dyscalculia, and many more neurotypes. But to paraphrase all this in the words of disability activist Liz Weintraub, we all have skills we wish we could excel at, but disabled individuals are often given a special label for their limitations. Neurodivergent students face many challenges. In her chapter in the Neurodivergent Resistance, bioethicist Ashley Shu posits the historical treatment of autistic people is filled with brutality and misunderstanding. Research that has demonized and problematized ND people has resulted in stigma and discrimination. Students face numerous barriers when trying to access diagnoses, accommodations, and support systems. According to the Autism Self-Advocacy Network, it can be really hard to get an autism diagnosis, especially for people of color, women and girls, trans and non-binary people, and people who figured out that they were autistic when they were an adult. Additionally, ADHDers have been experiencing an international medication shortage since 2022. Because neurotypical people often use these drugs for recreational use, we forget that for ADHDers, these are indeed life-saving supports. And 3, ND students will often change their natural behaviors to conform to societal pressure. This is called masking. Masking is exhausting, and it offers fleeting and few protections for ND people. Persistent masking can lead to a negative self-image, loss of sense of self, feelings of shame, depression, anxiety, and self-criticism, not to mention a delayed or misdiagnosis. In short, masking negatively affects a student's ability to function in the classroom. In addition to acknowledging the experience of English learners who are also neurodivergent, we are also going to explore the overlap of neurodivergent and English learning students and how culturally responsive teaching benefits their communities, but also beyond. Traditional classrooms can seem rigid, overwhelming, and unwelcoming for ELs and ND students. For example, ND students who are unable to filter out excess sensory information may find these spaces unendurable and may not have access to their typical coping strategies. Non-traditional students are not a monolith, so one dyslexic student may have an entirely different skill set than another. Spanish-speaking students don't all come from the same country or home environment. These are still individual, unique students who we must resist overgeneralizing.
And they have shared goals as we have them listed here. Of course, they want to succeed academically. This is, of course, a choice that they have taken to pursue higher education. So they do have that in common. They also want to graduate. So that's something that they look forward to do, and also find employment, which is something that all students want to do.
Although precise statistics on neurodivergent students in college and also employment are difficult to determine for a variety of reasons, around 38% of autistic adults in the United States are currently engaged in paid work. Many autistic people are underemployed, holding jobs that don't utilize their skills and expertise. ND and EL students, like all students, want to thrive, not just survive in their adult lives. So how can we as educators support their goals?
So here, culturally responsive teaching, CRT, strategies in higher education. So I came across this term in so many of my readings while I was completing coursework for my degree. And really became interested in this, just digging into it in a higher education environment. Because in K through 12, it is really common. It is also incorporated into coursework, into the curriculum. So how does this look in higher education, specifically in coursework? I was really interested in that, and that's what I'll be discussing here. But first, let's take a look at what exactly does it mean. So here I do give you a meaning of what it is. So it all encompasses acknowledging what students know, so their knowledge, and using that to teach them concepts, new concepts. So here, of course, it's being aware of their knowledge performance patterns of diverse students, building on previous experiences, and also just using that to highlight and to allow them to learn new things. For example, using their frames of reference as well. So acknowledging their cultural knowledge and creating a classroom environment where learning is relevant and effective for all students.
Jocelyn, I did notice that we had something in the chat, and I'm so sorry that we missed it, asking to put a definition in the chat. Can someone post in the chat to let us know what definition that was, Carol? Let us know. We're also going to
It was
send
the
the
Walker.
slides out.
It was the Walker definition of neurodivergent.
I will send that along along your way right after this. Thank you for that. All right. Sorry we missed that chat. We will work more on that.
Absolutely. So
We can overcome the challenges faced by English learners and neurodivergent individuals by making adjustments in our classrooms, highlighting marginalized voices in our syllabi, and challenging inflexible expectations. We hope that at least one of these recommendations aligns with your inclusivity goals for the upcoming semester and hopefully beyond.
So these are again things that I came across when I was doing research. And here, one of the things that I really want to highlight here is listening to students by building relationships that engage their critical thinking. So getting to know your students, right? That's really what this is pertaining to. And I'm sure many faculty members do that. So this is just like, hey, maybe taking that extra step and having a flexible communication, which is what's referred here by non-structured conversations. So not just engaging with students in the classroom environment, but also outside the classroom environment, in addition to even just a time that is structured for that student and faculty conversation. So just having something that's maybe informal that can also be super helpful for a student that may not feel so comfortable to come forward and actually engage with the faculty member. Also, having students encouraging them to have conversations maybe with faculty that may speak their native language might be helpful. Here in the library, I have spoken with and worked with some students where they come in and they actually speak to me in Spanish, and they want to just communicate in that. And I mean, the work that we look at together is in English, but they are using their native language where they feel comfortable doing so. So this is just getting to know your students. So here are just some ideas on how to incorporate it in your syllabi, in your lesson plan development. So these are ways to just incorporate CRTs, so culturally responsive teaching, to enhance student learning. So maybe encourage readings with diverse views for students to engage with and learn from different perspectives. Perhaps creating a class project that may include an issue of diversity, inquire about student interests maybe, or shape a lesson or a project along those lines as well, especially if you have a lot of students that are interested in a particular approach that is relevant to that particular curriculum that you have in your coursework. Peer feedback. Feedback is very important. Sometimes I know there is a lot going on during the semester. And the reason why I say I know is because in addition to being a librarian, I used to also teach in a classroom in the psychology department at my previous institution. So therefore, I know the time that is allotted for feedback. Sometimes that can be challenging, especially if you have a lot of students in your class, right? If it's a large class, but feedback is really important, and not just feedback, but clear feedback. That's one of the things that I used to get a lot of students asking me, like not necessarily understanding. And again, that comes back to that academic vocabulary. So clear feedback throughout the course is really helpful. Also, small group projects, allowing them to use various formats, whether it's reading, writing, visual, audio, blogs, whatever it is. So just allowing multimodal learning experiences for students, that's something that's really great as well. And also just small papers where they can, where you ask for them to reflect, perhaps maybe to indicate their personal opinions or how they reflect on the reading materials in the classroom. That's something that's also significant, especially for students if they're struggling with the academic language. This is also something for faculty to consider or see how they are comprehending the materials that is being used in the classroom.
Speaking of multimodal opportunities for students, educators are uniquely positioned to foster meaningful connections to course content by providing students with choice and autonomy. This can involve highlighting already built-in accessibility features regardless of the audience. So whether you know that there is a neurodivergent student in your class or an English learner in your class or not, it doesn't matter. We're going to highlight these options already. For example, if you assign a reading, a podcast, a film, demonstrate the audio feature that's available in many library databases, click the button, let them hear what it sounds like. You can show the transcript or caption options for audio and video content. Quite often, you can listen in English while seeing subtitles in another language, or read and listen at the same time, which is helpful to some learners. And instead of explaining to your class why someone might need these tools, all you have to do is simply inform them that they exist. And by doing so, we communicate that these tools are available for everyone to use without any questions or judgments. These features benefit ND individuals, ELs, and a host of others. Often, the unspoken message is that using these options is a form of cheating or special treatment. So it's essential that we destigmatize these valuable resources. Neurodivergent individuals might rely upon non-traditional objects in order to focus and self-regulate for extended periods of time. I have squishies on my desk. I have timers on my desk. These are all the tools that I use to get by. A student might use headphones or earbuds to block out superfluous noises, and that might be vital to their ability to concentrate. And I think often we look at a student wearing headphones and we assume that they're not engaged. So if you're not sure, you can just ask. If the weighted lap pad they have or the fidget item they have isn't appropriate for your classroom, that needs to be stated explicitly, and the student needs options going forward. These are all tools people use to self-regulate, and they have to find a way to self-regulate. Bodily stillness does not necessarily indicate a person's mood, level of awareness, or involvement. A student's engagement with course content may not be visible in their physical presence. Beth Radulski, a neurodivergent inclusion manager, has stated that for many, listening means rocking, flapping, or fidgeting to focus. I was in K-12 education for many years, and these whole body listening posters were ubiquitous. Teachers would say, "What does listening look like? Eyes on me, hands still." This is a prevalent concept in contemporary K-12 classrooms. And though whole body listening, WBL, is often espoused as being a tool, not a rule, it can have a negative, long-lasting impact on non-traditional learners. And it may be difficult for students in higher education to unlearn these expectations. Prolonged eye contact may not be a natural inclination for ND students. or those raised in cultures in which it is not considered appropriate or considerate. Though it is a cultural norm for both Americans and neurotypicals, it is not necessarily a signifier for respect or attentiveness. Many neurotypical people insist that eye contact is a marker of trustworthiness. This is a cultural view of eye contact from North America and Europe, where it is valued, but other cultures might view direct eye contact as rude or excessive. Many neurodivergent people need to stim in order to regulate their bodies and emotions. Stimming can look like hand flapping, hair twirling, repetitive vocal utterances, blinking, manipulating objects, and more. Stimming is a protective response to overstimulation. So if you expect a student to cease stimming, it is unlikely that they will be able to engage with any of the material. The need to stim may be heightened by prolonged stillness, so opportunities for physical movement are necessary for everybody in every class. If a student's stimming becomes disruptive, you can address this disruption discreetly and offer options rather than judgment. Suppressing stimming has been correlated with an increase in psychological harm, as it serves an important purpose when regulating the nervous system.
So we do have a question. So how do you make space for non-traditional learners, such as ELs and ND students? What are your success stories? We want to hear from you. Please share in the chat if you would want to do that, or you can also raise your hand and speak.
Anyone want to share any sort of success stories that you've used in your classroom? I see Simone has raised their hand. Are you able to unmute?
Oh, awesome.
Yes, yes. Hi, good morning, and thank you so much for this really super informative presentation. I'm also an ELL, and what I decided to do in my written assignments is to not base my assessment on grammar or any like mistakes, typos that come up. One, I felt like since I'm struggling, sometimes I'm not getting it right myself.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't feel like I should criticize students. And I'm teaching a dispute resolution. I also feel that there might be different classes where it is more important to like English or to point out when mistakes are made. But for my particular class, it's not something that has any impact on conflict resolution. And so I just want that everyone feels confident to write. A lot of the assignments are also self-reflective questions. So I just want them to be encouraged. I do also encourage them to follow standards, APA standards, but that is rather a format than the language itself. I don't criticize them. I do sometimes when I feel like, okay, the student just wrote it, it's like a word vomit, then I encourage them to just read it again and be a little bit more precise. But I don't want to assess their language skills. That's not the point of the assessments.
Yeah, thank you for that, Simone. Jocelyn and I have talked about that before in our own teaching. I taught library in K to 12, information literacy. So the writing wasn't always the most important part, and students were allowed to hand in assignments that were video or certain ages. I had a student submit an entire comic book, which sort of blew the other written assignments out of the water. So giving people other formats to express what they've learned in class. Thanks for sharing that. That can be really powerful.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that, Simone. Thank you so much for sharing. Because, one of the things that comes to mind just by you sharing is just this academic vocabulary, right? The expectation that they know what certain terminology are when it comes to higher education. So, you know, it is empowering when they are allowed to share in the specific area of English that they do have. So that particular skill, so they can speak English, they do understand English, they write in English, but this is going to be now the transition into academic English that they can also, you know, just share what they have, which is what CRT is, sharing their knowledge, and then of course adding to it, but also just acknowledging their strengths and using that to learn in a classroom environment. So thank you so much for that. Katie, I see your hand is up.
Hi, again, I just want to second this is a really great presentation and I'm taking notes as we go, but I hope to see your slides at the end. I do want to just say that some of the things I have done, I also do not necessarily go through correcting grammar for the same exact reasons that Simone just mentioned. Some of the things I will do, though, is I might address the class as a whole if I notice that there's something significant in terms of grammar or style. And so I won't target a particular student out, but I will take some time in class to go over some kind of basic grammar if it's necessary. And the other thing I'll do is also point students in the direction of the writing center and let them know that they can get one-on-one tutoring, that they can have somebody review their paper. So it's not me dissecting their paper and correcting everything, but it is them being able to work in a one-on-one environment. And so I've found the writing center to be really helpful with some of those kinds of issues.
Yeah, definite shout out to the Writing Center and all the work they do, and the Office of Accessibility, which Carol mentioned in the chat. All really great resources for students to know about. We remind students all the time of the Writing Center. We assume everybody knows about them, but even if they do, a gentle reminder, it never hurts.
And Katie, just thank you so much for that as well. And that's one of the things, right? It's like, okay, that's great. You know, that's when I mentioned earlier that in K through 12, they have linguistic support that it's almost like required, right? It's right there for them. They have it, you know, whether it's every day or not, that's a whole different situation. But here it's more they're on their own. They'd have to look, you know, and when I say here, what I mean is at college level and higher education, they have to look for these things. And sometimes because it falls on them, it's kind of difficult to identify what they are. So it's great, you know, having these resources here for them, because we do have a lot of resources, but it's just getting them to actually take advantage of it. So thank you so much.
Just real quick on that point, I don't want to take up too much time, but students often I find are not familiar with it. So when I had one of these classes where I brought up the Writing Center, I had several students come up to me and say, "Where is the Writing Center?" It was literally across the hallway from our classroom.
Wow.
And they still were not necessarily familiar with where the Writing Center was. So I think it's really important I'm like, you just walk out the door, cross the hallway, and you will be there. So I think bringing that to their attention is really important.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Good.
Tomasita?
Good morning. I'm Tomasita Ortiz. I'm a lecturer with the English department, and I also go by Tommy. And again, just to also thank you for, you know, really this informative session. I just wanted to point out that, you know, it really struck me when you mentioned the earbuds as and forgive me if I'm using the expression wrong, but as a soothing method for neurodivergent individuals. Since I often find it as a distraction for me as an instructor to see it, to see students with earbuds, because I've actually seen a few who are actually like listening to a show or a program, and so I actually put it in my syllabus this time around. So to hear that was really enlightening. And even though in the syllabus I indicate that, you know, I prefer please remove your headphones, earbuds when you walk in the classroom, unless it's used as a hearing aid. But I'd never considered it as a need, as a soothing need for some individuals, and just expanding that to, you know, the larger student population, where, you know, this actually might just be a comfort for students who just constantly have this. You know, they're just used to having it, and so it just helps me to like rethink, right? what's my norm in the traditional classroom setting, what my expectations are, and then how I also receive, right, what students bring with them. Because as I said, it tends to be a distraction for me. Like I constantly feel like I'm looking at that student, like, what are you doing? You know, so yeah, so I just wanted to share that point where I really appreciated, you know, thinking of the different ways that it might manifest without us even realizing.
It's not easy. I, as a neurodivergent person, I have 3 pairs of headphones in this room. If I lose my headphones, I am not good to go. I am not good to go at all. They are charging all the time. I don't even like having long hair, but I can conceal my earbuds under here. And I do, to me, the noise is someone snapping their gum over there. I can hear the lights buzzing. That person's picking at their nails, and my ADHD brain is picking up all these things at the same time rather than your voice. So if I stick in my earbuds on low volume, I am locked in and I am good to go because I have gotten rid of all that other audio stimuli that I don't know how to get rid of. And I do keep my hair long so people can't see it. But if someone wanted to ask me about that, I would happily answer. And I would love for someone to ask me about it rather than assume that I'm listening to a podcast or something like that. It's a coping mechanism. So even though it's an awkward conversation, you get it out of the way and you move on, you know?
Yeah,
Some
and
people,
I you know, I appreciate that in terms of just again reflecting on our practices, right? And so you think about a syllabus as a contract, right? And so perhaps and again, you just made me rethink this as we begin the semester, which is great. It's like, well, perhaps I don't have to have that written in the syllabus, and it's just a conversation that we have in the classroom, right? So things like that, so that students feel like they have options and alternatives, and it's not such a hard rule, right? So yes, thank you.
that's
Thank you.
awesome.
Thank you.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Also, thank you very much. I'm very grateful to be here and learn from this very informative workshop. I have also been a English language learner, so I have a lot of compassion for these students. I too was surprised to hear about the styming practices. I have students in my class that wear the big earphones, and although I have never addressed it, I caught myself kind of being a little judgy with them, like, oh, you know, they're wearing earphones when they are in the class. So this was very helpful in terms of reflecting and maybe even considering asking them the reason that they're wearing it and, you know, kind of go from there. So thank you for that. One exercise that I do in the class, and I find it interesting for the students, and they're kind of eager to participate, is a cultural share. So at the beginning of the semester, I don't do it all in the first day, but throughout the semester, I have 1 or 2 volunteers, and they just tell us something. They share something about their culture. I share something about my culture, and it's a way for me to get to know the students a little bit better, but also for them to get to know each other and create relationships and community above and beyond just what the lecture is. So just a couple of my thoughts. Thank you so much.
Thank-
That's great. If you ever do some trolling in the CUNY subreddit, which I do, I mind my business, but I read everything. And a lot of the students talk about being lonely and having a really difficult time making connections. So when you build connections like that in class and they get to clock students who they might have someone in contact with, like something in common with, you know, you've done them, you know, a double favor because they're going to be engaged with the students around them and they're going to have someone to talk to after class, which is invaluable. Anybody else before we move on? We are so grateful for all this sharing.
I just wanted to say that on the loneliness piece, there's at 11:30, there's a session on finding your people anti-loneliness pedagogy at John Jay, just since you brought that up.
Good and excellent plug. Good to remember that this is on our students' minds. They want to make connections here. We are going to move on, but we are grateful for all this sharing. We're just going to do a little product placement here about the library, just some light branding on services that we offer that will benefit non-traditional learners. So at the library, we are committed to recognizing and supporting various approaches to research assistance. So our librarians are available through various channels. We are available by chat. We are never a bot. I always announce loudly that I am not a bot. I am not AI, I am a person. Students can email us, call us, or visit us in person, which accommodates all kinds of learners. Sometimes a bad experience with a mean high school librarian makes you not want to go up to the reference desk. Fair enough. We're available by chat. It feels a lot less pressure for some of the students. I would also like to remind you that our services are not just for students. Faculty members are welcome as well. You are welcome to use any of these avenues should you need research assistance or finding resources for your classes. You know where to find us.
So here, as Ingrid mentioned, we do have the reference desk, and just to kind of extend on it a little bit more, I mean, these are pretty much standard approaches, but with unconventional spin to it. We wanted to highlight that the reference desk is a place where students can come and learn. Also, it's an informal platform for students to learn about academic vocabulary, especially focused on research. So sometimes students come in and they're looking for a peer-reviewed article, and they're saying, you know, this is what I have to find, but they don't know exactly what that is. So I mean, it does make it a little harder to not just, I need this, a peer-reviewed article, but I don't even know what I'm actually looking for. And then when I come across the peer-reviewed article, now it's reading this article, which is even a bit more confusing. So the reference desk is definitely a place where we encourage students to start to talk about their interests. And sometimes there are other conversations that happen at the reference desk as well. So it's not just a traditional, how can I help you? And just a direction to where to find materials or resources in a library or outside the library, but also a place that we get to know students, we get to know their interests. We also get to know their learning needs when it comes to research, and we engage with students, and they normally come back. A lot of our students come back and they visit often, and sometimes they learn how to use also the databases that we have here for them through these interactions. For faculty, we do have the library instruction class request that you can also request. We do have a form you fill out. So this is more of a classroom platform where librarians are teaching research skills to students as well. So that's something that we do have for all students, of course. We teach in person, we teach virtually. So we do have a little bit of flexibility there as far as like where we can engage with students when it comes to developing research skills and information literacy. It's also again, a platform where it's a classroom platform where we also can explain the difference between, let's say, a scholarly journal and a magazine, what the differences are, because sometimes there is a little bit of confusion there as well. So these are some of the things that we do have, and we engage in conversations and able to identify and introduce students to library services or resources that they may need as well. And we do have workshops. So we started offering workshops last semester. We will be offering workshops this semester as well. So workshops allow for smaller group learning. So the library classes that I previously mentioned, so those are scheduled, right? Faculty members request them. We do have a form. It is a process. Those are scheduled, but sometimes students don't learn everything, of course, during that period that we do have with them. So therefore, we are encouraging students to come back and to attend one of the workshops. It is a smaller group learning environment. It's more personalized too, because sometimes they have not just questions about the class that they visited with, but other classes that they're taking at John Jay, which is great because these are skills that they're going to need. And I'm referring to the research skills that they're going to need in all the classes here, right, at John Jay as they move along. So they're not just workshops, they're also an introduction to the space, so to the library itself, to the librarians, and also to the entire that they have access to during the entire time at John Jay. So these are things to that we are offering them. And just one of the workshops, as you can see here, demystifying academic articles and peer-reviewed resources. So that's, again, we do get a lot of questions when it comes to, well, what is peer-reviewed? So that's one of the reasons why we have identified that as a specific workshop on its own.
This past semester, also, we have introduced a low sensory study space where students are encouraged to participate in a 1-hour session dedicated to the activities of their choice, such as reading, studying, writing, or simply just taking a break from sensory stimuli. Earplugs or headphones at low volume are welcome, but conversations are not permitted. They go outside. This workshop is based on the productivity technique known as body doubling, which can be particularly beneficial for individuals with ADHD. We hope to offer this program again in the upcoming spring semester. Also, it's good for faculty to know that the library has bookable study rooms that are available for solo research. Escape from human interaction is a true luxury in this busy city, and it's an even more valuable resource for neurodivergent community members. Also, if any participants know about other possible low sensory spaces on campus, please let us know. The Office of Accessibility identified a sort of meditation prayer room that is open sometimes during the day, but we are always curious to know what the other spots are so we can recommend them to students as well. If you know, you can drop it in the chat or you can contact us afterwards. We're going to hit you with some closing thoughts. So most workspaces, libraries, and classrooms were not created with neurodivergent individuals or English language learners in mind. So any of these community members who have been admitted to college or earned a degree or maintained employment has done so against all odds. So it's then a wonder that NDs and ELs have been historically underestimated and excluded. So what opportunities and innovations is this campus missing out on when we fail to include them? And what do we have to gain if we are dedicated to their success? So we hope that going forward into this semester, that is something that is on your mind. We would also like to open the floor to any questions you might have in the last 10 or so minutes we have. The workshops, we have not set up the dates and times thus far, but they will be very available on the website. Also, we'll share our emails at the end, but if you want, you can send us your email. And as soon as we know when those dates are, we will happily send you an update. And Karen Akamoto, thank you so much, told you that much as well, but feel free to send along your contact information and we will let you know. Any other questions in the time that we have left?
I just want to say thank you. This was really some eye-opening information, so thank you.
Thanks for having us, everybody. I'm the kind of person who thinks of the questions I want to ask, sadly, 5 minutes after whatever it is I'm attending is over. And if you are that type of learner, welcome. Good to see you. So here are our contacts. You are welcome to contact us at any time. We are a very responsive department. There is the QR code for all the sites that we all the resources we cited today, in addition to a tiny URL, if that is more of your thing. Carol, I will send you that quote by Nick Walker, of course. And I imagine all these slides will be available in addition to these resources. Dan, do you have anything to share as the person who is in charge of this whole space?
Oh, no, I really appreciate it. This is beautiful. No, I have nothing to add, just to thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you everyone so much for attending, and please reach out if you have any questions or if you want to continue a discussion on any of the things that we've covered.
I do have one
Yes.
thought, this information needs to be shared more broadly than those of us, the 11 of us that happen to be on the screen. And I wondered, have you all had any, done any work with the Office of Accessibility Services? And I realize that it's not a diagnosable term, but
Mhm.
they will have an awareness of some students, not all. And the fact that it's not a diagnosable term concerns me about how are we going to reach the faculty that need to know this? Because I was thinking the easy way is the Office of Accessibility Services, because they work with the students on their accommodations, they'll know. But if the students don't come for an accommodation because it's not a diagnosable thing,
Mhm.
we making that connection. So I'm not expecting an answer now, but I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to be talking about it with the folks in the Office of Accessibility Services and Allison and Myrna, our legal counsel, about how do we get this information to the right people who may have the students in their class, which could be everybody.
I have made some connections with the Office of Accessibility. I'm very sensitive to how busy they are all the time. But if you have more inroads to collaborate with them, I would gladly take them. And I just want to say, well, neurodivergent is not a diagnosable term. Like, you can't go into a medical health professional and they say, you're neurodivergent. It's an umbrella term for many conditions that are diagnosable. Autism, ADHD, dyslexia has a different diagnosis process, but these are very, very expensive. They're almost impossible to get as an adult. So students, especially if they have someone in their family who is diagnosed neurodivergent and they really, find themselves acting like Aunt whoever, they might have a very good idea that they are, but um, health insurance, even the best health insurance for adults seeking a diagnosis, it's a near impossibility. So unless they were diagnosed as children, it might be a very difficult obstacle to overcome.
But then you also have people who don't want to be told that they are. And so what I was focused on is how are we, just like listening to the faculty members here, I wasn't the only one with this aha moment. How do we sensitize faculty for an awareness of it, separate and apart from the diagnosis? The only reason I mentioned the Office of Accessibility Services is because that's an easy way to make the connection, because they know the faculty who are dealing with the people who've come in for accommodations. But I was trying to figure out how do we get to those who don't could use this information.
I would love to find a path forward on that. We would love to spread the good word.
Jennifer's.
Hi.
Someone has their
Yes,
hand up.
Jennifer.
Hi. Oh, hi, Jennifer.
Yeah, thank you. Just to piggyback on that, Carol brought up a lot, and I think a good pathway to address that. I know I've had many students in the first year biology classes that have been neurodivergent, and I've worked with them to try and provide that additional support and time with the material. So I think that it would be helpful to get this information to chairs that they can then translate it and provide that information to faculty. We have coordinators that oversee our courses, and then they can help distribute it to adjuncts. But I think just being aware of this subject, aware of common mannerisms, behavioral cues, to try and cue in on that as the instructor in the classroom, to then be able, I mean, we provide students with those resources, but a lot of times it's that engagement with the instructor that many of our first year students, because I do first year bio, they don't even recognize that they have test anxiety or anything that needs accommodations. So getting that information into the hands of the adjunct faculties in the classroom through the chairs and coordinators, I think is a good pathway, and then the accessibility coming in and lining that up as well, and all the resources that we can have. Because I think that knowledge is not out there. I mean, we know what the supports are, but we really need to make it easy and compiled to be able to provide to coordinators and adjunct instructors that we rely on.
Very much
But
agree.
science is on board, because we have a lot of students, recognized or not recognized. I recognize we have a lot of students that could benefit.
Please send us an email. We are eager to collaborate. I keep getting told that we only have 2 minutes left, and I appreciate the reminder. So Thomasita, do you have
Yes.
like a elevator speech, like a Cliff Notes?
So quickly, I just want to say that this actually does help us move the information forward. I'm presenting, make the most of your 75 minutes on lesson planning at 11:30. I am definitely going to plug this information that I learned here and expand that knowledge, right? So this is part of doing the right thing, right? To get that information out.
Oh, thank you so much. Wonderful.
Teamwork makes the dream work. All right, I'm sure we are about to be told that we are out of time. You have our resources. I guess I will show that one more time as you are leaving so you can see them. Take a look, take a screen cap, and otherwise, don't be strangers. You know where to find us. We're in the library all the time.
Yes,
all
we
the
are.
time. Come find us.
Yes,
turn
thank
it
you
off,
so
though.
much.
Thanks for attending, everybody.
Bye.